Happy Friday. Come on in, pull up a chair. The Daily Dope is in the air. Howdy, 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 gang. Yes, I'm Jeff McAleer, back once again as your host here at The Daily Dope, presented by thegaminggang.com. Tonight is Friday, July 12th. This is episode 331. It took me a second. I was like, wait a second, so which one was... I want to say it's 331 of The Daily Dope. Gets to the point where there's so many of them, it's like, what number am I on now? So, tonight I'm going to share a bit of a how to play plus review the new edition of the Pathfinder Adventure Card Game. Now, if you notice, this game is in shrink. So obviously, I'm not reviewing this copy. I'm giving this copy away. Ooh, I'll get to that in just a couple of moments. But if this is your first time tuning into the show, I do want to point out this is a live stream, so it's a little bit different than most of your tabletop gaming shows out there. One thing I do want to point out, if you are watching live, there is chat available here on YouTube, and it's not on screen. It's one of the ways that I keep some of the stranger commenters at bay, but I do pay attention to the chat. So if you want to say howdy, or maybe you have a question, or maybe there's something about the Pathfinder Adventure Card Game you'd like to get a closer look at or ask a question about. If so, fire away and I will respond. Of course, if you do like the show, by all means, please... What in the world is stuck on my nose? It was like a piece of fuzz. It's probably a little piece of Pinky's cat hair blowing on through here in the duct tape studios. And all of a sudden it was like attached on my nose. I'm like, anyway, as I mentioned, if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you check out some of the videos on the Gaming Gang channel and you like them, by all means, please subscribe. And of course, if you do subscribe, be sure to ring that little bell, because it will not only notify you when there's a new video that is popped up on the channel, it'll also tell you when the stream goes live within about 5 minutes or so. I almost said 50 minutes. Duh. It's another day of running around prior to the show. As I mentioned on last night's show, my sister-in-law had surgery yesterday. She was recuperating in the hospital overnight. Swung over there. We're not sure if she's gonna end up stuck there tonight as well or not yet. So, anyway, but you know, it's not like life-threatening or anything like that. But still, anytime you have surgery, it's kind of weird, kind of bizarre. And yes, spending the night in the hospital is no great shakes. I know that for a fact. So, anyway, I do have some tabletop gaming news tonight. I'm going to jump into. And, of course, then we're going to jump into the how to play as well as review of the Pathfinder Adventure Card Game. So I know there are some folks out there who are not fans of the tabletop gaming news. If that is the case, by all means, take a look in the show notes below. If you are watching this after the fact, there are show notes within about an hour of the stream finishing up. So you can skip ahead right into the how to play as well as the review. If you like the tabletop gaming news, by all means, kick back, because I've got a pretty good selection of news tonight about a variety of different kinds of games. So, and of course, if you're watching live, you're here for the ride anyway. So there you have it. All right, so let's jump on into the news, because celebrating the 50th anniversary of the moon landing, Russian game company Crowd Games, or it may be Crow D Games, I think it might be Crow D, because their logo shows a crow. Anyway, they are releasing Space Explorers. And here's the dope. The conquest of space was one of the greatest achievements of the 20th century. In 1957, the first satellite, named Sputnik 1, was launched into orbit. Just 4 years later, Yuri Gagarin was the first human in space aboard the spaceship Vostok 1. This game is dedicated to the early space explorers, all the outstanding people who worked to make space travel possible. As Yuri Gagarin said at the moment of his launch, "Let's go! Let's light this candle." Isn't that what Alan Shepard said? Pretty sure Alan Shepard's like, "Light this candle." You are the head of a research and development hub in Space Research Center, competing with other such hubs in the spirit of the golden age of astronautics. Your goal is to complete large-scale space projects by gathering the best and brightest minds humanity has to offer. Thanks to your efforts, satellites, manned spacecrafts, and orbital stations will be launched into space. You score progress points by recruiting specialists and completing projects. The game ends when all available projects are completed, or you've actually recruited 12 specialists to your hub. The player who's made the most progress is the winner. Space Explorers is for 2 to 4 players, ages 10 and up, plays in around 40 minutes, and it will carry an MSRP of $29.99 when it arrives this month. Strangely enough, I don't have a release date. Now, you would think they would try to get this out there before the 20th, because the 20th will mark the 50th anniversary of man stepping on the moon. So I'm thinking it might actually be next week that this comes out. So chat is starting to heat up a little bit. We've got the Madman here. Lead Magnet has arrived. And X Solera X1, who I like to just refer to as X1 for short, are all in chat. So if you are watching live, because I do know there are a few other people watching live right now, join in chat. Say hi. I don't bite. Everybody in chat's usually pretty friendly. So anyway, Space Explorers looks kind of interesting. I find it kind of funny. I chuckle a little bit because Crow D Games, or Crowd Games, however they pronounce it, being a Russian company, I noticed it's kind of focused more towards like the Russian aspect of the space race. Although this does go further on as opposed to just going to the moon, because they talk about orbital stations and things like that. This could be interesting. Looks like an interesting card game. So, the first expansion for the hit AEG abstract battle game War Chest is going to be arriving in October, and I've got the dope. The old general returned to the kingdom on the eve of the heir's 10th birthday. He brought with him a book, or rather what looked like a book from the outside. The queen sat down with her child the next day, and together they opened the book. They found that the insides had been carved out and filled with more coins for their game, as well as some letters and wax seals. They took their chest from the shelf, opened it, and began to play. The chivalric system was a huge part of medieval warfare. Various offices of state were handed out to the highborn of the land, from bannermen that surrounded kings and queens to earls and heralds enacting their liege's will across the realm. Bishoprics had much land and influence associated with them, and they were sought-after positions for nobles. Can you add these 4 new influential units to your force and use royal proclamations to your advantage to once again triumph in this masterful game of tactical warfare? Nobility is an expansion for the highly acclaimed War Chest, and of course, the base game is required to play. War Chest Nobility is for 2 or 4 players. There is no 3 players, it's 2 or 4. Ages 14 and up, plays in around 30 minutes, and will carry an MSRP of $24.99 when it arrives on my mom's birthday, which happens to be the day after my birthday, October 25th. I like War Chest. War Chest kind of took me by surprise. It was one of my top games of 2018. So nice to see a bit of an expansion coming along. So that is pretty cool. So we'll get 4 new units, some royal decrees. I'm not sure what exactly that's going to be either, but could be pretty interesting. We dig War Chest. We played it on on our charity stream that we did back in November for Extra Life. So we had a good time. We played like 3 games of it during our 12-hour marathon. My next news piece is about a game that's coming to North America from Horrible Games and Luma Imports. Honestly, it's really kind of striking me as unique. It sparked my interest. I don't know a ton about it, but here's the dope I do have on The King's Dilemma. The King's Dilemma is an interactive narrative experience with legacy elements, featuring several branching storylines leading to many possible finales and an evolving deck of event cards at its core. Players represent the various houses leading the government of the Kingdom of Ankist. You will draw one card from the Dilemma deck each round and experience the game's story as it unfolds. Each card poses a problem that the council has to resolve on the king's behalf. As members of the king's inner circle, your decisions determine how the story proceeds and the fate of the kingdom. Each event happens only once. You discuss and bargain with the other players and then finally make a choice, determining the outcome, progressing the game story, and possibly unlocking more events. You have to keep the kingdom going while also seeking an advantage for your own house. This power struggle may lead the kingdom into war, famine, or riot, or it could generate wealth and well-being. This will depend on your choices. The thing is, each decision has consequences, and what is good for the kingdom as a whole may be bad for your family. Will you act for the greater good, or will you think only for yourself? The King's Dilemma is for 3 to 5 players, ages 14 and up, plays in about 45 to 60 minutes per session, and it will carry an MSRP of $79.99 when it arrives on August 22nd. Like I said, this kind of sparked my interest because it doesn't seem like this kind of like a fantasy setting, even though it is a fictional kingdom that you are the council of. But sounds very unique, sounds very different. Here's the issue that I might have. I have not been able to find much as far as like images. I'm sharing the images that are available for this game. As far as the distribution information, it basically says this is just a card game. There are like 300 cards, but it is still basically a card game. And I don't know, an MSRP of $80 for what effectively is a box full of like 300 cards? I don't know. I honestly don't know. I wish I had more info. I really do. I went to Horrible Games, their website, and clicked on their banner that they've got for the King's Dilemma, and that gave me a 403. So that was the page doesn't exist. And then I went to Luma, and they had no information about it whatsoever. So the only info out there is really from Board Game Geek and some distributors who are pointing out that this arrives on August 22nd. I am curious, though. I really am. Viper Dave has arrived in chat. Good to see you, Dave. Thank you for joining me. I am surprised we got as many people as we do right now. It's a Friday night. Don't you people have anything better to do? I know I don't. So here we go. Moving right along. I'll be flashing back to a classic film from my early 20s when USAopoly, also known as the Op, releases Die Hard: The Nakatomi Heist. In fact, I think it's out in some stores already. I am not positive, but here's the dope. Die Hard: The Nakatomi Heist board game uses a one versus many asymmetrical gameplay system to pit protagonist John McClane against others acting as thieves who are cooperating to foil the hero's plan, which is to save the hostages in the iconic Nakatomi Plaza high-rise. Movie buffs and hobby game enthusiasts will appreciate the game's distinct homage to the 1988 film. Wait a second, 88? Wow. Yeah, I guess I'd have been maybe like 20. Yeah, I'd be 20 years old when that came out. That's kind of funny. Anyway, so movie buffs and hobby game enthusiasts will appreciate the game's distinct homage to the 1988 film, which packs rules and gameplay to the ear vents with callbacks to Die Hard's most memorable scenes, characters, and events. Die Hard the Nakatomi Heist board game is a one versus many game of stealth, combat, and action tactics. Players will square off with a deck of cards and a map of Nakatomi Plaza between them. 3 acts worth of goals will move them through the story of the original Die Hard film. The thieves must work together efficiently and signal each other effectively to hack through the vault's locks and stop John McClane. John McClane must plot his path and manage his cards carefully to fight his way through and kill Hans Gruber. Die Hard the Nakatomi Heist is for 2 to 4 players, ages 15 and up. That is kind of an oddball age. So if they were going to bust out like profanity on the cards and that, I would say 17 and up. But I don't know why it's 15 and up. Anyway, the game plays in 60 to 90 minutes and will carry an MSRP of $39.95 when it arrives in stores and online retailers this month. As I mentioned, I think some of them already received their shipments. I do not know. So X1's like, we're here for Pathfinder. Yeah, I get it. We do the news every night, man. Or gal, whichever. I have my last news piece anyway. So, Fire Ruby Designs has a mighty interesting science fiction role-playing game. It's available in PDF. And here's the dope on Golgotha. The sepulcher awaits, or sepulcher is, I guess, what it's supposed to be. It's not spelled the way I'm used to seeing a sepulcher spelled, though. Anyway, the Golgotha. Even the names conjure images of wonder and great danger. The Paradox Spire, the Grove, the Resurrection Hive, the Delphium, the Glass Labyrinth. Travel far beyond the bloated worlds of the inner machine planets, past the verdant and colorful pleasure worlds, past the worn-out military rings where sanctioned wars rage endlessly, past even the fringe systems where separatists build their power, on into the outer dark, where the other races more ancient than humanity have long held sway. This is where the Golgotha lie. Ancient relics of long-dead empires, these mausoleums are riddled with countermeasures and deadly remains, not to mention bizarre alien species. Why would you choose to go there? Because Golgotha holds the secrets of unknown inhuman cultures within their echoing halls. Ancient lost technology that the overseers, caretakers of the human sphere, mysteriously covet. Steal enough from the tombs in exchange, the overseers will boost your body and mind, making you more than human, more than enough to complete your destiny. Welcome to Golgotha. Bum, bum, bum. Welcome to the future. Golgotha is a game of exploration and danger in mysterious dead installations at the edges of humanity's interstellar sphere. The players take on the roles of a crew of scavengers who seek out, penetrate, and rob those ancient lost structures, known collectively as the Golgotha. To these lucky enough, should say to those lucky enough to survive the risks, artifacts await, lost technology that the mysterious overseers who rule the human sphere covet. Find something of value, and in return, the overseers will boost your body, allowing you to finally seek that revenge you've always dreamed of. The assumption there is, I guess, everybody's out for revenge? Complete your destiny or die trying. This is a standalone, old-school Renaissance game of exploration and discovery using the Black Hack system, although you don't need to have the Black Hat to play. The 247-page core book is available right now in PDF from Drive-Thru RPG for $12.47. Reason why this struck me as being pretty interesting is it is based on the Black Hack, which I think is a pretty cool system. I think that's a pretty cool role-playing game system, especially to introduce people to role-playing games, especially the old-school Renaissance feel of fantasy role-playing. So this is a new science fiction system, and it looks kind of interesting. It does look pretty interesting. Flaming Huron has popped in. Power was out all morning and just came on just in time to see the show. Wow, how about that? That's pretty wild. I'm glad that you get power back on. I hate when power goes out. I lived in an area. I lived in Albuquerque for 3 years, almost 4 years, and I had a really great apartment, and it was right at the foot of the Sandia Mountains. And I'll be damned, we had the worst power grid anywhere. That power would go out all the time, at least once a month, and it would be out for a few hours, and you just drive me nuts. I hate when the power goes out. So anyway, good to know that Fleming Huron's got their power back on. Sweet. Anyway, so I was talking about Golgotha, and it is in PDF. It's available right now from DriveThruRPG. So I do want to mention that, of course, the Gaming Gang and thus the Daily Dope are affiliates of the One Bookshelf sites, including DriveThruRPG. So if you are going to swing over to one of those sites, please stop by thegaminggang.com first. Click on one of our banners. That way, if you do make a purchase, get a little piece of the action. A little bit. So, and that all really adds up. Really does help keep the website around. Because I do not have cheapo hosting. Can't pull in over 1 million unique visitors a year on GoDaddy hosting. It don't happen. Doesn't happen at all, Dooley. So, there you have it. Anyway, so I'm going to move on to the review of Pathfinder, the Pathfinder Adventure Card Game in just a sec. Do you want to talk about the contest? Oh yeah, how about a contest? So, for those who are probably tuning in to this show, maybe for the first time ever, do want to point out I currently have a contest running to win a prize package for the Pathfinder Adventure Card Game. So it includes the core game, which in just a few moments I will be showing you a bit of how to play, as well as reviewing. So we've got that. We also have the first expansion, the first adventure path, which is the Curse of the Crimson Throne. So this adds about 550 more cards to the mix. And I even have a pack of promo cards that will be included as well. So here's the cool thing about the contest. We're getting close to the first level, right? So in order to give out one copy of this prize package, I need to reach 1,600 subscribers by August 5th. Now, at this point in time, I think we're about 95 away. So, that's it's within reach, I think. If we hit 1,800 subscribers, I will give out 2 copies of the prize package. And if I get to 2,000 subscribers by August 5th, I will give out 3 copies. So, how do you get in the running for the giveaway? Pretty easy. Be a subscriber. I guess that's kind of obvious, right? And comment on one of the videos on the Gaming Gang channel. That's it. That's all you got to do. So, do want to point out, you should probably tell a friend, check out the channel, subscribe, because more subscribers, more chances to win the prize package. Also, have to point out, the prize package is only available to those in the United States and Canada, because I'm on the hook for the shipping. And altogether, it's a pretty hefty package between the core game and the adventure path. So yeah, I can't go in the poorhouse sending stuff off to Europe and things like that. So don't forget, jump in, get in on the contest. So I also want to point out, if you do watch the Daily Dope, or if you check out the Gaming Gang channel videos, or you visit thegaminggang.com, you already know this is all pretty much a not-for-profit endeavor here. So if you do like the show, if you like the site, if you like the channel, please consider making a small donation to Lil Bub's Big Fund and the excuse me, and the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. Yes, Lil Bub's Big Fund does provide grant monies to organizations which care for special needs animals who are awaiting adoption. These are not kill shelters or anything like that. These are organizations who care for animals who might be blind or deaf or just a little long in the tooth. Maybe they have mobility issues. Maybe they require medications every day. Regardless, these animals still deserve to find loving homes, and they will repay that love 100-fold. Believe you me. So, as I mentioned, if you like the Gaming Gang, if you like the Daily Dope, consider make it a couple of bucks, throw it little Bub's way. Anyway, why is my throat so dry? It's almost cracking right now. Anyway, so always toss that out. Of course, if you do make a small donation, shoot me an email. My email address is right there in the corner. It's jeffmcaleer@thegaminggang.com. And if you'd like, I will give you a shout out on the following show. All right, let me grab a sip here. Wow. And it's weird because it's kind of humid in the Chicago area again. Not as bad as it was yesterday and the day before, but still a little humid here. David Johnson's popping into chat. Good deal. Welcome aboard, David. So I'm sure folks are tuning in like X1 is because they want to see the Pathfinder Adventure Card Game, I should say. Damn it. Got another little piece of fuzz blowing around. Distracted me. Anyway, I'm sure people are tuning in to check out my how to play and review of the Pathfinder Adventure Card Game from Paizo Inc. It's designed by Mike Selenker, with assists from Chad Brown, Keith Richmond, Aviva Sheckerson, and Liz Spain. The game is for 1 to 4 players. It's up to 6 if you include an Adventure Path expansion. It is for ages 13 and up. Plays in about 90 minutes, and it does carry an MSRP of $59.99. So let's move on over to the other camera. So I've kind of got the introduction, the little introductory scenario set up to kind of show you how the game plays. So one of the things that I do want to point out, it says it's for 1 to 4 players. There are multiple characters. There are more than 4 characters in the core set, and there are standees for 6 of the pawns, the character pawns. So I kind of have a feeling that you could probably push it to 6 players with what's in the core set. I can't tell you that positively because I have not tried it. So I'm going to open up the core set here, the box, kind of show this off a little bit. I do want to mention that I already have the cards for the Curse of the Crimson Throne in here. So, about a little more than half. A little more than half these cards come from that adventure path. But still, you do get, I want to say about 375 cards in this. And one of the things that I was really impressed by is outside of like the blessings, there really aren't duplicates. So it's all, each card is an individual thing. It's an individual character or character card for their deck, locations, story banes, monsters, weapons, allies, armor, so on. So this has got a nice amount of gameplay in it. So one of the big changes here, I'm going to close this back up, that people have asked about what's different with this new 2019 edition as compared to the previous edition. I have to give my answer is of, I don't know. I honestly don't know what most of the changes would be, simply because I had only played the app game. So I had not played the actual physical card game. One thing I can tell you for certain is brand new are these storybooks. So we've got a storybook for The Dragon's Demand. That's the first adventure. It is a little bit shorter than what you'll find in the expansion adventure paths. To kind of give you an idea. I will zoom in so you can take a peek at this a little bit. But I have, here we go. I have the other storybook. So this is the storybook for Curse of the Crimson Throne, which is based on an adventure path for the Pathfinder role-playing game. So quite a bit more. So each like adventure chapter is kind of broken up into 4 acts or more, 4 or more. So for an example, we see like 1A, 1B. So this actually goes on to 6 with a bonus adventure on the back. So there's a lot going on in this Adventure Path add-on. I'm not sure if I'm going to do a standalone review for the Curse of the Crimson Throne Adventure Path for the card game or not. I haven't decided because, for one, I've already put them in here, and I don't necessarily want to tear it all apart. I might do a written review. That I might do. So David Johnson says there's some new graphics and some new actions as well. Cool. So let me zoom on in, and I will show you. Where did it go now? I just had it. Oh, it's sitting off on the side here. I'll show you the rule book a little bit. So let me just kind of pop in here. So there are quite a few pages to the rules. They do make sense. I do recommend that you keep the rule book handy because there are different things that you can do with the cards that might get a little confusing. So one thing I did like is that we've got these little sidebar boxes that kind of give you a little more examples of play or strategy tips. So, or specifically kind of breaking down to give you a better idea about the rules themselves. So the actual process of each player taking their turn is pretty easy. It does move along fairly quickly. So more tips about strategy. So there's art throughout. Talks a bit about the different card types. One thing that I think is very cool about the Pathfinder Adventure Card Game is that your characters, just like in a role-playing game, are going to kind of level up. They're going to get better. So as I mentioned, the game says the game box says it's for 1 to 4 players, but we've got all of these characters. So it's kind of interesting that we've got all these various characters you can choose from. I wonder if it's just the fact that some of the spells, maybe there aren't enough cards for the spells and blessings. That is a possibility. So there is the rule book there. And then we have the storybook, which I'm going to zoom in a little bit more so we can take a look at the storybook. And as I mentioned, this is kind of one of the new additions. So the storybook will kind of give you a little read aloud. Then it's going to tell you what's going on in the adventure path itself, kind of gives you a layout. It also shows, okay, so how many players? If you're playing 1 player, you're going to use 3 locations for this introductory scenario. If you have 2 players, then if each player is leading a character, to kind of give you an idea. So it's almost along the lines of how many characters. So you would have 2 locations. Or I should say 4 locations. Then we've got more locations get added in based on the number of players. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So then as you continue along, it's going to tell you the advancement of the story. It's going to tell you how you're going to put together the location decks that you're going to play through as well. So David Johnson says the leveling is slow. Yes, it actually is slow. You get these hero points, which you can use to boost your characters. We're going to take a look at the character cards as well. One thing I do want to point out, these tokens here, they came in a punch board. And what you're supposed to do is you can use them. On one side, it says the hero point. So you earn those. The other side, we've got these different designs. So we have different condition cards. So if you are suffering from, they call them scourges. If you're suffering from this scourge, you'd actually take a token, put it on the card, and then take a matching token and put on your character. So to indicate that you've got that problem. You're wounded here. So in this first starting adventure, there are only a few different conditions or scourges you can be suffering from in this adventure. So the way this is set up is we've got some different locations. So we have 3 locations. Each of these locations have a little deck of cards. What we're trying to do is we are trying to find the bandit. He's the big bad that we have to defeat. And we have to be able to go through these 3 locations to find out where is he located and defeat him. So one of the aspects of the game is we've got these different locations. We have to either close a location out, or we have to have a character guarding a location to prevent the big bad, the big villain, from getting away. So with fewer players, it can be a little tough to team up and visit different locations together, because you need to close these out or you need to guard them. So as an example here, the bandit was much more in line for Amiri, the barbarian, to tackle than Lini, the druid, whichever way you want to pronounce it. So we actually had to close out one location, and then we used Lini to guard a location because we had figured out where the bandit was located. So let's look at some of these cards. And first thing we're going to take a look at is we're going to look at the character cards. So I'm going to move some of this out of the way so we're not necessarily distracted. So we've got, let's zoom in a little bit more. So these are the character cards like so. So just like a traditional role-playing game, we're going to have our attributes that run down the side. So we've got strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. It's going to show us which die we're going to roll, because we also have standard role-playing game dice, except for a 20-sider. We do not have 20-sider in here. No percentile dice either, but we do have a 10-sider. So we have challenges that the characters will face. So in order to overcome these challenges, we'll have a target number. And depending on what it's asking us for as far as our attributes, which they call skills here, it's going to tell us what die we get to roll. So Lini's the druid. She gets to roll a D4 for strength, a D8 for dexterity, D8 for constitution, D6 for her intelligence, a D10 for wisdom, and a D6 for charisma. But she also has some special skill breakdowns underneath each of these attributes. So she has divine wisdom, so +1. Perception is wisdom +2. And survival, which is wisdom +3. So if we run across any challenge that features these keywords, then this character would actually get a bonus. So it does show the hand size that the character gets to start off with. So hand size of 5. We see these little boxes here. These boxes are the leveling up process, where you would spend a hero point to knock off one of those boxes. So we see that a hand size of 5, proficiencies are divine. So that means when you draw a hand of cards to begin your game, you want to make sure that you've got a divine card in your hand. If not, you can take a mulligan and redraw a hand of cards. So then we also have powers too. So we have special abilities, which we'll see that we also have these little check boxes, which you can actually level up to make better. So to kind of give you an idea, we also flip this over. It's going to give us a bit of backstory about the character, and it's also going to give us a deck list that it'll tell you, okay, so if you're going to create your own deck, this is the breakdown for the cards. then you can actually level up on here too. So you can go and get more cards because your deck of cards is actually your health. And I take that back. The mulligan card is the favored card, not the proficiency. It's the favored card. So an animal ally. So when you're drawing your hand to start the game, if you don't have an animal ally card, you can mulligan and draw a new hand of cards from the deck. So that's how this all works here on the card. Now, as you continue the story, you can actually get roles for your characters. So, like for an example, we've got Wild Whisperer, we've got the World Walker. You have to play a few adventures, but you'll get to a point where it'll tell you, hey, you're able to pick a role, which actually allows you to get even more powers for the character, because then you'll have these 2 cards. But starting off, you're just going to use the 1 character card. To kind of give you an idea of some of the cards here. So we have blessings, which are spells. The blessings also represent our hourglass deck of cards, which is our timing mechanism. I will show you those in just a sec. So we can see that if we have this card in hand, right, if it's part of the deck, then we care about the powers section here that tells us, what does this card do? If it's something that we encounter from one of the location decks, then we're looking at how do we acquire it? What are we looking to do to acquire this? If it is a card that is part of the hourglass deck, then we look at this. When this is the hour, it'll tell you no effect. Now, we'll have a specific... Excuse me. Wow. Like I said, it's weird and dry and dusty down here. Yikes. I haven't sneezed down here in months. All right. So this is kind of a blessing card. So this is kind of, because Leanie's a druid, she's going to have some, like, cleric spells. So that's what the blessing is. So it'll tell us what we get to do. Then we've got regular spells. Once again, same kind of thing. If we see up here, check to acquire, it might be something that's in the vault, which we're trying to get, or it's something that we've run across from the location decks. So we would need to beat that challenge number. Once we did own this card, though, we care about the powers. And then we've got some keywords down here as well. So if there's challenges that have any of these keywords, it's going to help us out. Or if we run across something that says it's immune to anything like this, then this spell won't do very well for us. So for an example, the power says, for your combat check, banish to use arcane plus 2d4 or divine plus 2d4. So when you banish a card, banishing the card is effectively discarding the card. We have recharging. We've got revealing. That's why I said you want to keep the rulebook handy, because there's a glossary in there. It'll tell you exactly what these different words regarding the cards and how you use them actually mean. Because it was a little tricky when we first started out. Because it's like, okay, so reveal, all right. So reveal is just show the card from your hand of cards and you put it back into your hand. Whereas recharging it does different things. You can end up discarding the card. You can have where you're putting the card back on top of your deck. You can have it where you're putting it on the bottom of your deck. So there's a lot of different things going on. So that's a spell. Then we have a weapon card, dagger. This is one of these cards where you would reveal it. You don't actually use the card and discard it or put it on the bottom of your deck or anything like that. You can use some special abilities that if you want to, you can actually recharge the card and get a bonus. We've got another spell. We've got items. Got different items that you can use. Another spell. We get allies. Now, it's not just the druid who gets different allies. Just about every character has allies of some sort. Linny has a lot of allies to start off with. I mean, they're a little weak, but they're all different animals. So we have a bat. There's another blessing. There's a frog. She has hide armor that she can use, which can allow you to ignore damage. Another spell, another spell. So here, she's got a tiger. It's actually a better ally. A snake, a dog. They have all have different powers. All have completely different powers. Now, as I pointed out before, your deck of cards is your health. So you have a hand of 5 cards if you're playing Linny. So as an example here, I would draw this hand of 5 cards, and I could keep this. I have to keep it, actually, because I do have an animal ally in my hand. So I've got a dog, I've got cure, I've got a dagger, I've got a spell, and I've got a blessing. So actually, this is a pretty decent hand of cards to start off with. That leaves me with 10 cards in my deck. Now, when you take damage in an attack or whatever, you lose your points from your hand. So if you took 3 points of damage, you would actually have to choose 3 cards from your hand, discard them, so they are gone. There is healing, you can get cards back, but you would lose those cards, and then at the end of your turn, you actually draw back up to your hand limit. So what effectively happens is, if you get to the point, let's say you got a hand of 4 cards, and you got to draw a card, and you don't have anything in your deck, that's it. Your character's out. So that's kind of like your hit points in the game are your deck of cards. So that is, to give you an idea, that's Linny here. Then I've got Amiri, who is a barbarian character. Just kind of show off a little bit. And of course, favorite card would be a melee weapon. There's the roll card. So Amir starts off with some items too. So she's got a crowbar, she's got a horse, a blast stone, some blessings, chain shirt, a compass, battle axe, warhammer, another blessing. She's got a soldier as an ally, long spear, leather armor, and a long sword. So you're probably thinking, well, geez, you got all these different weapons and stuff. Why do you have so many weapons? Well, because the weapons, I'll give you an example. Let's look at the warhammer here. So the weapon says powers for your combat check, reveal to use strength or melee plus 1d8. So Amiri's strength is 1d12, but they have a melee skill with plus 2. So it's 1d12 plus 2 plus 1d8. But you might be up against a challenge that's pretty high. So you might want to actually take like a special ability that, say, like a long spear's got. This tells you strength or melee plus 1d8. You can additionally discard that to re-roll. You got a long sword here. Says you can reload the card to get another 1d4. Reloading the card actually makes you put the card on the bottom of your deck. You don't necessarily lose it. You don't burn the card. Don't burn through it. So it does, it's not hurting you health-wise. So that's kind of give you an idea of the character. So those are the 2 character decks that I'm kind of showing off. I'll show off some other stuff. So we've got locations. So as I showed you, the way I had it set up with the 3 locations, we're going to have a deck of cards in each of these 3 locations. Now, these locations will say, they might have like a special ability. So this is a trail. So it says the difficulty of checks to defeat is increased by the number of distant characters. Distant characters are characters who are not at your location. So when you're on a trail, it makes sense to have more characters together to tackle the deck of cards that make up the trail. Then we have, like, for an example, we've got the caravan. So we've got the caravans, which is with this beginning adventure. This is where this starts. All the characters start here. It says, at this location, at the start of your turn, each local character may move. Pretty easy. You'll see that we also have these locations say to close or guard. When you close off a location, that means that the big baddie can't escape to it. Normally, it'll also mean that you can't continue exploring any of the cards in the deck. So normally, for the most part, you'll probably close a location when you don't have any cards left in that location. Also tells you what happens when you have it closed. So that is the caravan. We've got a trail, and then we got a campsite. And the campsite shows you at the end of your turn, if you're at this location, you get to heal a card. So it's a healing location. So if you had taken damage and you had discarded cards, you'd be able to put one card back at the end of your turn. Also tells you what you got to do to close it or to guard it, and what happens when it's closed. We also have an area here because, of course, obviously enough, you can create your own adventures with all of these cards. It will tell you small, medium, and large. So to give you an idea of, like how long you want to play the adventure. Kind of gives you an idea, small, medium, or large deck and what you would include. So we got monsters, we got barriers, we got weapons, spells, armor, items, allies, and blessings. So some of the locations will have bad things going on. Some will have monsters. Like I said, we're trying to find a big bad. We also have, in the adventures, we'll have henchmen. So for an example, this is Storybane. So in the first little intro adventure, you're fighting two groups of wolves and defeating a bandit. So what'll happen is we have two groups of wolves, but we only have one dire wolf card. So we actually have cards in here that show that they're a henchman proxy. So this is the proxy for the dire wolf. So if this card was revealed when I'm exploring a location, I know that I've got to fight the dire wolves. So here it shows, how do we defeat it? 12 or better combat roll, or 6 or better survival. It'll say powers cannot be evaded. So there's all different keywords on all of these different cards. Some of them will allow you to evade, which means that you can avoid having to fight whatever creature. And it also says damage is increased by 1d4. So what happens is, let's say as an example, Leanie was fighting the dire wolf. Well, Leanie only has survival or combat. Well, she does have survival is wisdom +2. So she would get 1d6 +2. Now, if there was nothing else in her hand that she could use, she's going to end up taking damage. So what happens is the damage is the difference between the challenge number and what you end up rolling. So we get a 1d6 +2. Well, we get a 6, we get an 8. Still nowhere close, but it would be 4 damage. Well, if Leanie had a hand of 5 cards, she'd be discarding 4 of those cards. That would be a serious hit. Now here it says damage is increased by 1d4. Boom, we'd have to add on an extra 2. You can never lose more damage than the cards you've got in your hand. So, when you're fighting stuff, if you can use cards that you don't have to discard, it's a good idea, because then if you only have a couple of cards in your hand and you lose by 8, you're only going to lose 2 cards. So that's kind of an idea of what the story banes are. We've got barrier cards. So once again, we've got a number to defeat, and then it'll tell us, okay, so what happens? Well, this razor snare says if we can't defeat it, then we have to have the Entangled Scourge. Remember I was showing you before? If that happens, you're going to put a token on the Scourge as well as on your character to show that, okay, they suffer from that. So that is a barrier. That's a barrier. It's an obstacle that needs to be defeated. Then we have monsters. So it'll tell us about the monsters. So this is Swamp Ooze. Combat to defeat it is a 9. Then it says powers immune to cold, fire, mental, and poison. After acting, each local character either recharges in armor or suffers 1 acid damage. Recharging armor, once again, you're basically taking that armor and you're putting it into your deck. You're taking it from your hand, putting it in your deck. So we got different monsters. We've got, for an example, like the Blood Bug. There's the bandit. There's the big baddie we'd be looking for. We've got a Goblin Troublemaker. We've got a Rescue. So sometimes we'll have boons too. We'll have good things. We'll have equipment that we can get as far as being able to acquire things. So for an example, like a crowbar, like if I'm taking stuff from Amiri's deck, like a chain shirt, that chain shirt might be part of an adventure. That's how we would acquire it. We also have a vault, which normally the vault is actually any card that's not in play. But for an example, for this adventure, we have a selection of different cards in our vault. So you might be able to get one of these cards as kind of like a treasure for defeating the bandit in the end. For everybody winning the scenario, the little adventure, you would get to choose one of these items to add to your available cards, keeping in mind that your deck size is still going to be determined by your character, because as I mentioned before, the deck determines your health. So we've got that. Then we've got our timing mechanism here, which is the Hourglass deck, which every time a player takes his turn, they're going to flip over the card, and whatever it says when this is the hour is going to be a special effect that's taking place during that turn. So the introductory adventure here has 12 cards. So effectively, the players would get 12 turns. So if you had 2 players, then each player would get 6 turns. If you had 3 players, each player would end up getting 4 turns throughout the game. So to kind of give you an idea what you can do, the Scourge cards also have a player reference on the back. So because there are a few different Scourges, not all of them are, going to be used in an adventure. So it tells you your turn overview. First thing you're going to do, advance the hour. If you do not have any more Hourglass cards available to you, you fail the adventure. It says you may give a card to another local character. So as you're playing some of the more meatier and longer adventures, you'll run across, getting equipment, getting spells, things like that, and your character might not be able to utilize those. Well, obviously, you still want to try to get them, because then you can give them to the other characters as long as you're at the same location. And hopefully, maybe they've got something they can give to you in return. You can move to a distant location. You can explore the top card of your location. So basically, when you get to a location, let's say we've got the caravan here. I will zoom out a little bit. So we've got the location. We've got kind of our location deck underneath it. So we would send our characters. So that's there they are. They're moving. So, and then we would explore. And exploring it is flipping over the first card. And of course, that shouldn't be sitting there. It's the dire wolf. Here we go. We would say, okay, let's say we get the henchman proxy. Well, that means we have to fight the dire wolf. that's the henchman for this adventure. The dire wolf is represented by the henchman proxy. One thing I do want to point out too is if you have more than one character at a location, and let's say Leni fails, there are blessing cards that you might be able to boost her abilities, her die rolls. So that's important to keep in mind. The blessings will tell you. Now, let's say, for an example, well, Denny was unable to defeat the dire wolf. What normally would happen is this would get shuffled back into the deck because it's still there. What can happen, though, is if you have another player here, you can say, hey, you know what? I'm going to engage that challenge when it's my turn, and they have to discard a card, but they can tackle that same challenge, which is very important when you're looking at trying to close out locations in that, because if you keep failing and no one else is trying to, attempt to take these challenges out, you're just going to run out of time without ever revealing the big bad that you need to defeat. So you'll continue playing until you end up running out of the cards in your hourglass deck, or you are all killed, you're all wiped out, everybody's decks have been depleted, or you defeat the big bad. So another thing I do want to point out too is you want to pay very close attention to the characters, because the characters have different powers that could become very important. So, like as an example, Amiri can take another character with them when they move. So they can easily move to another location and take another character with them. There are some characters that are specifically designed to assist other characters. There are some characters, there's one character in particular that's designed to kind of just run solo, kind of as a loner. So you really need to kind of look over the powers for the different characters to be able to best attack the challenges that you face in each of the adventures. So, all in all, playing your card, it'll tell you, like I said, you try to have the rules handy. This is also something you keep handy because it's going to tell you the different things with cards. So playing a card, drawing a card is just adding it to your hand. Revealing a card is showing it. You do that with weapons. Displaying it, you put it face up next to your deck. So like you would do that with armor. You reload, you put it on top of your deck. If you recharge it, you put it on the bottom of your deck. If you discard it, it goes into your discards. If you bury it, it goes under your character, which is effectively out of play. And then if you banish it, it goes in the recovery pile or the vault. Sometimes you can get recovery cards back. It is very, very rare. So that is pretty much how you play the game. So to kind of give you an idea of how this would play out, I'm just going to mess around a little bit, kind of show you. I'm going to zoom back out. I'm going to set this up. So we'll leave that. Is this the... Yep. Okay, so that's that. Should have 4 cards, I think, for each of the locales. So we've got a trail. These go down here. Usually you're gonna have a little bit more room to kind of spread out. Where were the other ones? That's the vault. Who cares about the vault? All right. Well, let's say for an example, we've closed out the campsite. So we've closed out the campsite, so we don't have to worry about that. So let's say I've got my 4 cards for Amiri, because Amiri's hand size is 4. And then Lenny's got their 5. So let's say it was Lenny's turn. Lenny goes to the caravan location, and so that's moving. Let's say there was nothing that we were trading. We didn't have to give a card to me. So Lenny moves there, gonna explore, and it says, okay, razor snare, barrier 1. to defeat it, you can use dexterity, acrobatics, disable, or survival. Well, we know that Lenny has a survival, which is wisdom +2, which is going to be a d8 +2. It says if undefeated, suffer the scourges, I should say, entangled and wounded, and then end your turn. So this is the challenge here that Lenny would be looking to overcome. So looking at the hand of cards that she's got, she has, looking at the powers, you're going to look at the different powers to see what you might be able to do. It says when you, that is not an obstacle, it is a barrier, so that doesn't help. So there's no card here that can assist, but let's take a look here. This is Amari's cards. Okay, so Amari actually has a blessing. Now, you can play cards to help the other players, help the other characters. So it says on any check. So this means on any check. So it can be your check, it can be someone else's check, it can be a distant character's check. It says on any check. You can discard this to bless. Boom. So let's say, for an example, we want to make sure that Lenny gets past this. All right, so, but what does bless do? Well, like I said, we've got that handy dandy glossary here, and it tells you bless allows you to add a die that matches your skill die to a check. So that would basically mean we would get to roll 2d8 and add 4. So we get to, no, actually, I think it would just be add 2. I don't think you get the bonus. I think it's just the die. So that's 1. That's 2. So we know we got a +2, so that's a 4. So we need at least 2. Whew. Wow, just squeaked that. So the Razor Snare would be defeated. This card would be removed from the game, put off to the side, and then Lenny would go to draw back up to 5 cards, but didn't spend any cards, so there's no need to do that. Then it would be Amiri's turn. So Amiri could say, "Oh well, you know, I'm going to search through the trail here." So here we would get the bandit. Now, one thing I do want to point out is that if you find the big bad in the like right on the first turn, you shuffle it back into that deck. So we would have Amiri tackling the bandit. So the bandit is 9 plus number sign. So number sign represents the number of the adventure. So if we were fighting a bandit in adventure 3, it would be 9 plus 3 plus 3 for a challenge rating of 15. So it tells you, okay, to defeat it, we need 9 plus number. This is adventure 1, so it's 11. Or banish a random boon. Well, I don't have any boons, although, so we're looking at powers. Before acting, we have to recharge a card. So that means we would have to take a card out of our hand of cards. It says, if undefeated or evaded, bury the bottom card of your deck. And then we've got human, bandit, veteran are the keywords for this. So if we were to defeat the bandit, and let's say we still had this location open here, we wouldn't be able to, we wouldn't stop the bandit. The bandit would actually go to a random location, and since we have this closed out, he couldn't go there, so he would actually go to this other location, and we would shuffle up the deck, and we're back to square one. If he defeats us, he goes back into his own deck. So at least if we uncover the big bad and we don't defeat them, at least we know where they're at. So that helps. And that's pretty much how you would play the game. You'd be using your cards as far as trying to give you bonuses when you need them, while also making sure that you don't blow through your cards too quickly, because those are your hit points. And there are a variety of all different adventures, all different characters. We have pawns. Now, I do want to point out I have the pawns for the 4 characters that are in Curse of the Crimson Throne, so they are added in here already. But we have all the different pawns for the characters. So I believe David Johnson said that the tokens here and putting them on scourges is something new. So that is something added to it. So we got the pawns, and I think I pointed this out before that I think some of the artwork for Pathfinder is good, and then some of the artwork I just don't care for. Like, for an example here, I hate the whole, like, anime manga style of the sword is bigger than the actual character itself. There's absolutely no way that this character would actually swing that sword around. It is impossible. So I'm not a fan of some of this art style. Most of it's fine. It's just some of the goofiness I don't care for. The other thing I want to point out too is, and this is something that is with Paizo pawns, I guess it's just their thing, the artwork gets cut off. The artwork gets cut off on their pawns all the time. And to me, it's sort of like, well, either shrink the artwork down or make these little cardboard tabs here larger. Because to me, I think seeing the artwork get cut off, and I have actually seen some of the bigger pawns for like big monsters for the Pathfinder role-playing game. If I were buying those, I'd be pissed. Because a bunch of artwork gets cut off because everything has to be squeezed into a standard size like this. So as I mentioned, we do have 6 of the stands too for little pawns. I mean, I don't hate the pawns. It's just, it kind of irritates me that the artwork gets cut off. And some of the artwork is just kind of silly and goofy. So David Johnson says there were no standees in the previous game either. So these are new. So anyway, so effectively, that's how you play the Pathfinder Adventure Card Game. You go to different locations, you face different challenges, be they monsters or barriers or banes, or like, for an example, rescue is one that's in this this earlier adventure. And you have a set number of turns to be able to do that. Normally, you'll have 30 cards. So you'll have 30 turns to be able to defeat the big baddie or take care of whatever is the critical card that has to be overcome for that adventure. If your characters all die out before, then you lose. If you run out of cards in the hourglass timer, you lose. So the only way that you win is to actually defeat that specific card, track it down, defeat it, and then you're able to get the spoils. And the adventure book will actually tell you what you get for winning that adventure, for successfully completing that adventure. And it's pretty cool. A lot of times it's like you can get any, like, whatever level ally, or take any level 1 boon, which is like something good, and it's out of anything. So you could, I thought it was pretty cool. I thought that was pretty decent how they did that. Sometimes it'll say specifically, get a hero point to be able to level up. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot of adventuring in the game itself. In the core game itself, there are quite enough adventures and cards to keep you busy for quite some time. We've got 3 parts. I think there's... well, I'll tell you right now. We'll take a look. So we've got... here's the introductory adventure. Whoops. So we got the introductory adventure. We've got the main kickoff. So if you're familiar with the game, you can jump right into here. So for an example, so we have 1A, 1B, 1C, 2A, 2B, or not to be, 2C, and then we get 3A, 3B, 3C. So good amount of adventuring in this. There's 10. There's basically 10 tales. But then again, keep in mind, you can create your own adventures too, because remember, these locations are going to tell you how you can create the different decks. And there are loads of locations. That is something else that is pretty cool. So Dave Johnson says it's a satisfying game, setup is slow. That is one of the critiques that I will have for the game as well. So I kind of covered how to play it. Now I'm going to share my thoughts on what I think of the new edition of the Pathfinder Adventure Card Game. So I never played the physical game in the past. I had played the app game on my iPad, and I thought it was kind of fun. I didn't play it a ton. So I was interested when I heard that there was a new edition, because I have friends who've played the adventure card game, the previous edition, and they liked it. They said it's a little, sometimes a little crunchy, but they liked it. So I was like, cool. So definitely checked it out. We have played 4 of the adventures through to completion. A couple of them we played more than once because we lost the first time out. But we have played the first 4 adventures in the core set. And I really like the game. I like it a lot. Does take a while to set up, especially when you've got more players, because you have to have more locations, more decks of cards. So it does take a little bit of time. You have to make sure that you build the character decks. That's why I personally have the 4 starting characters. I already have their decks pre-built. I've been keeping the introductory game all in one bag. The cards for the introductory adventure in one bag. So if I'm gonna show somebody how to play it, I can set it up pretty quick. But yes, David is right. Setup does take a bit of time. It is not Arkham Horror levels of setup time, though. That is for certain. But you are going to take usually maybe about 15 minutes or more to set up and get ready to play the game. So, gonna ding it a little bit for that. I'll ding it a little bit because I don't like how the artwork is cut off on the pawns. To me, that's just, that's like a pet peeve of mine. So there's that. So outside of that, though, there's a lot to like. Oh, the other thing that's a little odd is sometimes you run across stuff that doesn't thematically fit in the location and stuff like that. It's like, don't worry about it. It's like, come on, it's just a game. You're not actually playing Pathfinder, the role-playing game, and somebody being like, oh, well, you got that shark in the tower there. Huh? What? How did that happen? But I like how it gives you a role-playing game feel to the game. I dig that. I like the variety of cards. I think that's fantastic that Paizo is not giving you a bunch of duplicate cards. I thought that was really, really nice. I think the game plays quickly. There's not a lot of downtime, even if you have 4 or more players, because the turns move pretty quick. And everybody kind of stays involved, too, because you'll have blessings. Almost everybody gets blessing cards. And you can use some of these blessings for other players' turns to help them out. So you're always kind of keeping an eye on the cards you have in hand, even when it's somebody else's turn. Plus, a lot of times, playing with players who might not be real familiar with the game, you want to pay attention to what they're doing, because you want to say, oh, hey, don't forget, you get to add this, or, what do you have in your hand? This is a game where you're all cooperating together, so it's not like you're hiding the cards you've got in your hand. We actually were playing where we just had our hand of cards laying out on the table so anybody could take a peek at them. I think it's got a lot of theme. I think it's very, very thematic. I like the different characters. I like the different aspects of each of the characters. Each of them plays a little bit different. It's not just, oh, I'm a healer, oh, I'm a fighter. They have little unique powers that if you use them correctly, if you team up the characters correctly in your group, really, really helps out. On the flip side of that, if you don't pay attention to what your characters can do together, it makes the game harder to actually win. So all in all, I give the new edition of the Pathfinder Adventure Card Game a very, very solid 9.1 out of 10. I am looking forward to finishing up the introductory adventure booklet and moving on to Curse of the Crimson Throne. I seriously am. And we're leveling up our little guys, too. One thing I do want to point out is I'm not one who likes to mark off things on my game components. So we're actually using the little character sheets so to track our advancements. So anyway, so there you have it. Very, very pleased and very, very much enjoying the time I'm spending with the Pathfinder Adventure Card Game. Once again, don't forget, I got a contest going. You can win this. You can win Curse of the Crimson Throne. You can win the promo cards I've got. Just have to hit 1,600 subscribers before I start giving stuff out, and that is before August 5th. All right, so that is it for tonight's show. David Johnson points out there's an app to use. That's cool. I was not aware of that. I didn't know that there was an app. Paizo's got so many different things. So I am, I should say I'm going to try to see, because I did an interview. Gosh, now I can't remember the young woman's name. Maybe it was Teresa? Yikes. At Origins Game Fair, and we talked about the Pathfinder Adventure Card Game and the Pathfinder Adventure Card Game Society. I might actually go and meet up with them again at Gen Con, because there's supposed to be a big, huge event. So I might actually go and cover that. So that'd be pretty cool. All right. Anyway, as I like to point out, when you're not watching episodes of The Daily Dope or checking out videos here on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all the latest in gaming news, reviews, comics, movies, TV. By now you know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. On Monday's show, I will be reviewing Robotech, Attack on the SDF-1 from Japanime Games. And then the rest of the week, I will be off because I will be out in San Diego covering Comic-Con. It is the 50th Comic-Con, so that should be pretty sweet. So I will not be back again until a week from Tuesday. I will take the following Monday off just to recuperate from the convention. Anyway, everybody who's been in chat, thank you so much for hanging out and keeping me company. Those of you who watched live but didn't jump into chat, why not? We're pretty friendly. We don't bite. And of course, I love everybody out there who watches the show after the stream goes and gets rendered as well. So until next Monday, have a great weekend, and everyone take care. Thanks again for watching The Daily Dope, presented by The Gaming Gang. If you like this episode, be sure to give it a quick thumbs up. And if you dig the channel, please subscribe. If you'd like to check out our previous episode, click right here. And if you want to check out a somewhat randomly selected episode, give a click right down here. It'll be like opening a box of Cracker Jacks. You just don't know what you'll get. Once again, thanks for watching, and I'm Jeff McAleer.